tutorial will focus on the instrument, miscellaneous, and function settings that exist across 3 tabs in an instrument generator's channel settings window. Virtually every generator plugin in FL Studio has at least one of these tabs included, so a good working knowledge of all the parts is essential to maximize your music making in FL Studio. The Instrument Settings tab contains envelopes, LFOs, and a filter. The parameter that is being modulated by the envelope or the LFO is selected by clicking one of the 5 tabs at the top of the window: Pan, Volume, Cut, Res, and Pitch. Pan does not have an envelope control. An envelope is activated by switching on the orange LED under the tab buttons. Editing can be done in one of 2 modes: Time, which sets the length of the various stages of the envelope, and Tension, which sets the curve shape for each stage. Apart from the standard attack, decay, sustain, and release stages, each envelope also includes a delay setting and a hold setting. Delay sets a gap between a note's start and when the envelope kicks in. Hold keeps the attack at its maximum level for a period of time before the decay starts. The Cut, Res, and Pitch tabs all contain an additional amount knob for the envelope, which controls the amount of positive or negative offset that the envelope applies to that parameter. To align envelope stage times accurately with the tempo of your project, activate the Tempo-based button. If you right-click an envelope stage, you can then set the length of that stage in steps. The envelope times can be altered by using the knobs or by clicking and dragging directly on the envelope. Switch between time and tension modes by right-clicking on the envelope. The LFO affords you a choice of sine wave, triangle wave, and square wave. By default, the LFO has an attack envelope applied to it. This is adjusted with the attack knob. Like the envelope, the LFO has a delay as well. The amount knob controls the amount of offset the LFO applies, and speed controls the rate of the LFO. The LFO also has a tempo-based button for when you want to sync the LFO to the project tempo. Right-click Delay, Attack, and Speed to access the tempo sync time increments. Normally, the LFO is triggered from the start of its cycle every time a new note is played. If you want the LFO to operate independently of the start time of each note, switch on the Global button. The Filter section lets you choose the kind of filter that will be applied to the sound. There are 8 filter types. LFO and envelope modulation that you apply to cutoff and resonance will be applied to the filter that you set here. The Miscellaneous tab contains settings that relate to the various generators. The levels adjustments provide global controls that provide for easy automation. See the advanced video tutorial on automation for more on these. The polyphony settings allow you to control how voices are handled within the generator. The max LED sets the maximum number of voices the generator will play, which can help to keep the CPU usage at a minimum. When there is no value set, there is no limit to the polyphony except for your CPU power. The Porta button will enable Portamento for the channel. The slide knob controls the time taken to reach each new note. Note that Portamento in FL Studio doesn't just apply to pitch, but also applies to cutoff, resonance, and panning. The mono button restricts the generator to just one voice. When 2 notes play at the same time, there will be a slide between the 2 notes. The slide knob also affects the timing of the slide. The cut section allows you to cut notes in one channel with notes in another, useful for things like drum, hi-hat, mute groups. The number you set in the first box is assigned to the current channel. If you set the same number in the second box on a different channel, whenever a note plays in the first channel, it will cut the note in the second channel. Here I have a string sample and drum sample. The drum is set to 1 in the cut box. When the same number is set in the cut by box on the string channel, the drum will cut the string sound. For a channel to cut itself, for example when you have a long sample that you want to restart completely each time you trigger it, set the number in the first and second cut box to be the same, or just press the Cut Itself button. The preview keyboard at the bottom allows you to preview notes by clicking on the keyboard, as well as set the root key by right-clicking a key, and the key range by clicking and dragging. The Enable Main Pitch button is on by default and affects the operation of the pitch knob at the top of the channel settings. The root key operates exactly the same as other samplers. When you first play with it, it seems counterintuitive, because setting the root note to a higher note will cause the pitch to go down, and vice versa. In connection with this, the Add to Key will pitch the MIDI note by the amount that the bass pitch is being offset by the root key. This is useful when you are using generators such as Beat Slicer and Fruity Soundfont Player, which use multiple samples. The main advantage being that you can use different octaves to trigger the notes while still triggering the samples that you would have triggered had the root key been set to its default. For more on this, consult the online help. The Reset button will return the default bass notes and remove key regions. The Fine knob allows you to fine-tune the sample. The Function tab contains the Echo Delay, Arpeggiator, note timing controls, and a velocity keyboard tracker. The Echo Delay doesn't work like a delay plugin. Instead, it works directly off the notes triggering the generator. This means that all notes output by the delay are additional voices. Delayed notes can have panning, cutoff, resonance, and pitch changes applied to them. Feedback controls the volume of each echo. Centered, all echoes will be the same volume as the original note. To the right of the center, the echoes will get louder. To the left, they will get softer. The same principle applies to the pan, cut, res, and pitch knobs. Time sets the delay between each echo, and the echo's LED sets the number of echoes. Ping pong will bounce the pan value once it reaches 100% left or right. Fat mode will add subtly panned and delayed echoes to give chorusy or flanger-like effects. There are several presets to get you started as well. The arpeggiator can operate in one of two modes: the classic style, whereby the notes that are held down are arpeggiated, or a predefined chord template can be applied to the sequence. The arpeggiator is activated by pressing any one of the direction keys: up, down, up and down doubling the top and bottom note, and random. Time sets the delay between each arpeggiated note. Right-click for tempo-based time presets. Gate sets the length of each note. Range sets the note number of the arpeggiator in octaves, and repeat sets the number of times the arpeggiator will repeat within an octave before moving to the next octave when the range is set to more than one. The chord drop-down allows you to select a preset chord to apply to the sequence. If you have more than one note playing at a time, both notes will be arpeggiated in unison. The slide knob will slide from one note to the next, and the speed of the slide is affected by the gate knob. The time section contains a gate knob which will truncate longer notes down to a maximum length set in steps or ticks. The offset knob will shift the start point of notes by up to one step. This is similar to the offset edits available in the graph and the step sequencer, except that you can automate it using all of FL Studio's automation controls. The Velocity keyboard tracker links the velocity and the MIDI notes that you play to pan, cut, and resonance. Click the volume button to control velocity tracking